Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. Have the Committee of a Whole meeting for March 11th, 2019. I see we have quorum. Call this meeting to begin. So first, as I look under all this, we have to do the adoption of agenda. Has anyone seen the agenda, and is there any adoptions to be made or changes? Not seeing any. See that Councillor Stewart has put the motion forward that the agenda for the March 11th, 2019 regular meeting of committee be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And disclosure of pecuniary interest. After viewing the agenda, does any councillor have a pecuniary interest or general nature thereof to declare? And not seeing anyone, Madam Clerk, please take note. That's my planning act, wrong one. So now we have department reports. Are you going out?
First one is the
First.
I'm sorry. Oh. Okay, sorry. Motion put forward by Councillor Wink that the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council adopt the 2019, user fees and charges, and that the necessary bylaw be prepared for consideration at the next regular meeting. Discussion on this motion. So, Councillor Hahn, or are you?
So we're through you.
Yes.
We're just discussing this now, or we're voting on this. What is your?
Well, if no one has any points to bring forward, then we vote on it. I'm sorry?
The yellow are the new ones.
What I do with the MCC. Absolutely, and that's in here too. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
For all the fees.
Yeah, these are fees. Yes, I do. Let me just get to the page. Am I not seeing it on here? The MCC.
I'm sorry?
User fees.
Oh.
We're talking about.
Oh, Councillor, we're waiting for Councillor Hahn. Oh,
Councillor Hildebrand is raising his hand.
yeah. Councillor Hildebrand has a question or two.
I just want to make sure that I understood properly. This report, we're asking to approve it right now without any questions, or are we going to go through it in detail?
No, we're going right now. We're waiting for questions.
Are you wanting us to ask questions about the report?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, I do have some questions about it. With regards to ice rates, how can the summer rates be less than the winter rates? And
Director of Recreation and Wellness will answer that now. Vicky is answering.
Thank you.
To
Ms.
you,
Van Maven's way.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hildebrand. The ice rates are based on the average ice rates across the region according to summer rates. So on average, the rates are, for instance, the city of Welland, ice rates for, actually we are a touch lower, 178.19, 13, we're recommending 175. For youth rates, Port Colborne rates are 128, we're recommending 144. Non-prime rates, again, we are recommending in Port Colborne, they're $79. We're recommending 110. So, and they go up from there. Basically, we try to stay competitive and also sell as much ice time as what we can.
Councillor? Did you hear that, Councillor?
I heard it fine.
Okay.
The question I have, I don't think this, or do you have an evaluation that shows that this covers the cost of running the ice for the summertime?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is not based on actual costs, it's based on the going rates across the region.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Is that how we justified running the ice in the summertime?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, how do we justify it? The plan was to have summer ice, the needs were there, and that was the recommendation from council. So, past council, so that is what we're proposing to date.
So Counselor, I'll let you have one more question, then we'll move on, okay?
Thank you.
You want another question?
Go ahead.
Okay,
I have
thank you.
another one, but go ahead.
Okay. Counselor Hahn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I had some feedback from an individual resident that I just wanted to share. So the question is, the ice rental rates. So what rates are the Pelham, GOJHL, and midget teams paying? And should be paying the same as minor hockey, which the Pelham taxpayers subsidize?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hahn. I take it you're asking the AAA and Junior B? Is that what you're asking?
GOJHL?
Greater Niagara.
Yes.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So, they are paying, the Junior B team pays the youth rate, because they are youth, during practices, and they pay the adult rate during games. And AAA, they pay the youth rate, their youth, basically.
Okay, great. And I do have another question, but if you want somebody else to go.
No, go
Yeah,
ahead,
Okay.
and then we'll move on.
Further to that, through you, Mr. Mayor. Also, too, the MCC gym rate, it had mentioned that it would be a minimum of 3 hours. Is it 3 hours, 3 days? The daily, like the daily event has got 3 days. It should be 3 hours for a daily event? Is that an error?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hahn, the, I believe, I don't have, the gymnasium rate, that is for a daily rate that must be rented for 3 days. That would be, for instance, for a trade show, an art show, and so forth. Although the chances that is happening is slight to slim, because we are not purchasing a flooring. So in actual fact, that could come out, that rate.
So further to that then, so licensed users, we're only going up 40 cents for the full-size hourly gymnasium rental from licensed users, from $20 to $20.40. And then for half the gym, from $10 to $10.20. We're actually only increasing for 20 cents or 40 cents. How does that compare, I guess, to the competition?
Okay, so I did a analysis with regard to, sorry, I just can't see my notes because it's too dark over here. You're getting there, yes. Oh, thank you. And there was light. Okay, so for instance, the licensed users, we only have one licensed user, and that is Pelham Minor Basketball. So if we take that as an example, Pelham Minor Basketball at the Catholic Board of Education, what we charge for the use of one full gym, we have 2 full gyms. The Catholic Board would charge them $10.40. We charge them $20.40. The public board would charge $18 even. And, yeah, so basically, we are charging them more than the boards of education.
But how do you think that our facility compares to what the boards of education are offering right now? So a school gym, we're talking
Yeah.
about school gym, right?
So
Dated.
we do have, there are advantages to a school gym over our gym. The glare. Many teams would rather not play at our gym because we have a glare. We do have some challenges with the lines. The $20 an hour fee that was originally agreed to, the Basketball Association came to us and said, we will pay $20 an hour. We pay right now to $10 an hour for the same use. But because we want to support our facility, we will pay $20. So in saying that, and again, for half of the gym, it's $10, and half of it, obviously. For the Board of Education, it's $5. The Catholic School Board, it's $5.20 if someone wanted half of a full gym. I mean, no, that's just minor basketball, okay? So if a private user wanted to go in and rent a school gym, I would pay $40.80, or I'm sorry, $38.90 per hour for use of the facility. $38.90. Okay? We're proposing $40.80. For the public school board, I would pay $36 for the same. And for half the gym, it's the same. It's cut in half. So these rates are actually a little higher than the local gym. We are also proposing to charge, let me just see, a rate for use of the equipment as well. And it's in here, as well as, for instance, if someone wanted to come and rent the gym and they didn't have equipment or basketballs, if they wanted use of the badminton nets standards, we have the rackets and the birdies that would be an extra cost. So it's not, in the past, we haven't charged anything. They would come in, they would pay the same rate as the license fee, and we would set up the net, give them the balls, and they would play.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Trophy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Some of those rates that the Director of Parks and Recreation is suggesting is pretty accurate, but there's only one discrepancy, because I've been involved with a lot of these sports. It's basketball, they're used a lot on the weekends. And when you're at the school gyms on the weekends, on Saturdays, it's an additional $28 per hour for the caretaker, and on Sundays, it's $40.75 per hour for the caretaker on top of their user fees. And that's when they run all their tournaments. So when they're running tournaments out of here from the whole month of March, the OBL League was here, I believe, the Ontario Basketball League was running out of here on Saturdays.
Through the Pelham Minor Basketball.
Yeah, so that's where this cost savings is, in the caretaker's fees. So they would normally be paying $38, almost $40 an hour.
Okay.
So we need to see if we can work something out that balances it.
Any comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can look into those fees. I know that the Basketball Association, they don't normally pay. Now, because it was this particular tournament, they may have, and I will look into it. And if that's the case, which I'm sure that you've looked into it, we can come back and adjust our fees for that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Corey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're getting back to the summer ice program. How many hours do we have to date that are rented? Or we're just saying the ice is there, people are just going to rent it? Do we have any commitments?
Do I have summers? Do you have those numbers? Not in my head. Do you? No. Right at the moment, I know that we have June, July, and August from 6 to 9 rented during the month, during the week, Monday to Friday. We also have during the day power skating schools. We have hockey schools coming in, and the figure skating club. I can give you an analysis, a summary at the next meeting, if you wish, on the proposed rentals for the ice.
Yes, that would be appreciative. Another question would be, we talked about removal of ice. How many times are we going to be removing the ice this summer? And I think we talked about a cost of $3,000. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a chance of one of the clubs having a show, and we weren't too sure if we're going to take it out or put it or leave it in.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kaur. Actually, over the past couple of days, we are working on an analysis on the feasibility of taking out the ice, putting in the ice, taking out the other pad, putting in the other pad to accommodate some of these shows. We are hoping over the next week that we will only be taking out the ice once in one of the pads. And I can report back to you probably within the week. And which that is a cost savings of about, I don't even want to say this, about $24,000 at the end of the year.
So that's just the estimate of 24. We don't know that yet.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a cost analysis of basically removing the ice, putting in the ice, treating the ice with the contractors for painting the ice, as well as we're just trying to figure out costs on the water and the utilities. But there's definitely a way to accommodate the home show, the art festival, and the lacrosse tournament.
For you, Mr. Mayor. So we're only going to have one pad if we're going to go with the summer. I presume we're going with the summer ice. It's only going to be one pad.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, most definitely, it's our hope that it will only be the Doulaban pad.
That's the smaller rink.
Okay, Councillor Wink?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, going back to the gym rentals and the comparisons to the Catholic School Board and DSBN, is there a breakdown at, for example, at the DSBN as far as prices are concerned? Because I would think that it would cost more to rent the gym at E.L. Crosley, the main gym, than it would be the small gym at AK Wig, or the entire gym at AK Wig.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have their rentals, and basically no, E.L. Crosley is the same, the size. I mean, if you're taking the double as AK Wig. The issue is they only have one gym, but it's the same cost. So in other words, the E.L. Crosley would obviously be higher demand.
Yeah, but AK Wig and Glenegg Green, the basketball courts are far smaller than what they would be at Crosley. So I can't see how they could be the same price.
Okay.
I guess the question that has to be asked, are they regulation size? Are we comparing apples to apples, or?
Well, Crosley to our gyms would be in comparison,
Yeah,
but not to the small gyms at the public schools, elementary schools, sorry.
thank you. Councillor Trophy?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I printed this off today, and this is from the DSBN in the rates. So they got it category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So any minor sports that has volunteers for coaches and the money goes back into the youth, they're considered a category 3. So with the size of the gyms, they'll have they got it broken down to a double gym, a large, and a single gym, and then a gymnasium small, where they're considering the elementary schools, so the rates drop there. The most expensive, if you're looking at a high school, would be $14 per hour that they're charging. But the problem is when you get into the weekends, when they're using it on Saturdays and Sundays. So then it'd be $28 plus that 14 on a Saturday when they're running stuff. And if they're running a tournament on a Sunday, it's $40 plus that $12. Because you got to pay the janitor's fees on top of that. If we're just talking Monday to Friday, then and you want to compare to the high schools, we're pretty even. Or we're actually a little bit more. But it's when they start using them on the weekends when we're considerably cheaper, because of the overtime fees for caretakers. And that's the rule that the DSBN or the school boards have. A janitor has to be present when you're renting the gym out on the weekends.
Well, and that's not just tournaments, it's house league play, so it's every Saturday.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's where I'm not familiar how the house league works. I'm not involved in the house league, but with the rep teams.
Okay. Well,
And through you, Mr. Mayor, dealing with the summer ice again, and I'm sorry, are we gonna have public skating?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we plan on still running our shinnies, public skating, puck and stick, seniors learn to play. And those are all mainly during the day. We will have public skating where we can on the weekends as well.
So if I may just say, I hope, Mr. Van Ravensway, that this is our initial run. I hope we'll be keeping very good track of when we have that in the summertime. I realize those programs you've just mentioned are relatively successful in the wintertime. It will be interesting to see what the participation rate is in the summer. And obviously, we will be tracking that. Great, thank you. Any other questions on user fees and charges?
Yeah, one right there.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, on
Councilor Stewart.
the summer floor rates, St. Catherine's for their, they call it dry floor, for a non-event, that's $74 an hour, that's for youth, and for an adult dry floor, that's $91.70. And then, but if that's just like for practices, but for an event, it jumps to $211. Where, yeah, that just doesn't make sense. So an event, ours is really high.
That's a good thing.
And then it says event electrical system. What does that mean?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the event electrical system, when you have trade shows, we have a full electrical system that we bring out our power boxes
Okay,
that we use for events.
okay.
And those are the same boxes that we use for all of our events, for the trade shows, indoors, for outside, the markets, the Summerfest, Canada Day, and so forth.
Okay, thank
you.
you.
Yep.
Councilor Trophy.
Sorry about that. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Vicki, would you be able to do like a study, like average it out what we do during the week at the 20, like we're charging $20 an hour plus the weekend. And then if we can compare, if they're paying $10 during the week and what they pay on the weekends and see what it comes out to. It might work out, I don't know, same, might work out cheaper. I don't know.
Yes.
Like with the
through
user group, the Pelham Minor Basketball.
For Pelham Minor
Because
Basketball.
we're getting $20 across the board, 7 days a week. We're they're at the high schools, whether it's the Catholic Notre Dame or Crosley, they're getting Cat 3, $11 an hour, but then on their weekends it goes up considerably because of the janitors.
I can do an analysis on that. It's easy to do.
It'd be good just so for our
Yes.
reference what we're comparing.
Yes,
You know, if we get some extra money out of them.
I will have to refer back to their licensed agreement as well, and I'll do that and make sure that council has that information as well.
So they have an agreement, is it like a 1-year, 2-year agreement or
No,
more?
through you, Mr. Mayor, all of the licensed users, there's 6 of them, is for a 5-year period,
Ooh,
yes. Specifically for their associations. So that's where if the other associations are coming in under the basketball, that is when we can look at different rates.
sorry. Through you again, Mr. Mayor, my last question, sorry. Is there any rental for their offices? I noticed that Pelham Minor Basketball has an office, Pelham Minor Hockey has an office, and the Junior B team has their own office. Are they just included in their rental rates?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Pelham Minor Basketball, Pelham Minor Hockey, Pelham Figure Skating Club,
Oh, I didn't notice that one.
yes, all have their own, and actually, in the winter months, AAA, all have use of a office area. In the summer months, lacrosse will either borrow the Pelham Minor Hockey's. That's what happened in the past, and they basically share the office in the summer months. But that is in their agreement.
I noticed there's 4 or 5 individual,
Correct.
yeah, so they each get their own.
Correct. Now, storage is a different thing. Additional storage, they pay a fee for. I would have to check and see what that fee is, but their storage is a different rate because not all receive storage.
So just to finish it off, so going through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be another little avenue, because when they're renting the local high schools, they don't get that extra little perk of having their own little facility too. So just things that we can look at to try to make some extra money to cover the cost here.
Counselor Locke?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned about 5-year contracts. Is it a flat rate for 5 years, or are there increases over year 1, 2, 3?
They do speak of an increase each year, an annual increase. So they know that it is an annual increase, and in the past, it's always been a 2%. Actually, I have one of the agreements with me. It doesn't say a actual fee, but I believe that it was spoke of a 2% increase per year, which that was what was always in past practices, 2% increase.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be important that the council have that information, and again, how many people are under a 5-year contract? We talked about Junior B, AAA, basketball. Is there 6, 7 groups that are under contract, or we have a contract with?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's the licensed users, and I can get you a full list of them. It is 6. It's minor hockey, AAA, Junior B, lacrosse, basketball,
Skating.
figure skating. Thank you. You knew I couldn't get it all. 6.
And through you, one more question. How do we have a AAA team?
Through you, Mr.
I
Mayor.
thought we were AE, and my son played hockey.
Yeah.
It was always AE, AAA.
So-
Where did that come from?
So AAA has always been, maybe you can explain it better than I can, but AAA, our residents play on AAA select teams across the region or across the area. Every community should be giving AAA 1 hour or 2 hours just to contribute to our residents playing on this AAA team. We've never been able to do that, ever. When the facility was built, AAA asked, we want to bring 2 of our teams here in light of the past, and that is how they received their agreement, and now they do get ice time with us, and they pay.
If it's all right, we'll go to Councilor Bob. Councilor
I just
Hildebrand.
have one final statement to make. I'm hoping going forward, I realize the situation we're in for this year, but going forward that we'll know what the revenue and the expenses are for the arena, say for the pool program, for the operation of the parks, and all those different things. I'm not sure, we may have it right now, but I haven't seen it in detail, so that we know exactly what the decision is based on in the future when we come to budgeting this coming September. I think as a counselor, that would be very useful for myself.
Thanks, Counselor. And Ms. Van Ravensbrae is going to answer you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hildebrand. The reason why these were presented tonight is because the budget is being presented along with it, and the budget revenues, expenses, are based on these fees.
Contract, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
through you, Mr. Mayor, I also want to add that this is, we haven't gone through a full year at the MCC. So part of the first year operations was always to have the summer ice. But I do agree with Councillor Hildebrand that we will look at the analysis, see what the revenue is that's coming in, the actual cost to run the one pad in the summertime, and look at the feasibility data. So that's still part of that full review of the MCC after we've completed 12 months. So we will do that.
Thank you.
Any more questions on user fees? Okay, seeing none, I've already read the motion, although, well, I'll read it again. We may have forgot it. That the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council adopts the 2019 user fees and charges, and that the necessary bylaw be prepared for consideration at the next regular regular meeting. All those in favor? Okay, any opposed? That motion carries. And next up is a motion put forward by Councillor Hahn. The committee recommend that council receive the concept sheet proposed 2019 municipal grant allocations, and that council approve the 2019 grant allocations of $16,995 waived facility fees plus $8,500 cash allocations for a total of $25,495, and that the in-kind request total $14,000, let me just start that again, that the in-kind request total $14,585 as outlined in the 2019 municipal grant allocation summary be approved. Discussion on this motion. So we're talking about the municipal grants. Silly computer. Councillor Hildebrand, any comment from the other area of the world?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Can we move on? Everyone should have reviewed these by now. Okay, so I'll call the motion, the vote on this motion. All those in favor? Thank you. And all those opposed? Motion carries on the grants. Thank you. Oops. Oh, I see. Okay, excellent. So now we'll have a presentation from the acting CAO and treasurer, Ms. Quinlan, on the 2019 operating budget.
For you, Mr. Mayor, here to present the 2019 operating budget. The agenda for tonight, there'll be an overview. I'll talk about the 2019 operating revenues, the tax levy proposed increase, the operating expenditures for 2019, separate discussion on the Meridian Community Center, the Pelham Transit, and the debenture and debt. So as part of the overview, the Meridian Community Center, the 2019 budget is $488,000 of a deficit. of which $361,000 pertains to the utilities. And we'll go through that in more detail. A long-term debt, we have what's proposed for two debentures, $1.7 million and $4 million. And once again, we'll go through more detail. Cash balance, by issuing those debentures, that will enable for the town to start to replenish the cash balances. And that would give us a positive balance at December 31st of 2019. The reserve and the reserve funds are underfunded and short of cash, and that's where the debentures will start to replenish the reserves. The land sales, most of the land sales for the East Fawn Hill should happen by the end of 2019. The tax levy increase is right now at 7.12% after a growth of 2.01%. And the strategic plan, currently council and staff are working on the 2019-2022 strategic plan. And this is where council's priorities will be set, and the vision for, and also set the vision for the next 4 years. And this will also set the goals for the staff. So the operating revenues, as you can see from the pie chart here, the largest part of our revenues comes from taxation, almost $14 million, 81% of the total revenue. Then we have revenue coming from the various departments. So in the next slide, we'll show the details of where they come from in more detail. So the non-taxation revenues, so this is the breakdown. As you can see, recreation, culture, and wellness has almost 16% of the revenue. It's about $530,000. Interest penalty income is $280,000. That number is actually going down, that revenue, because of our collection of the taxes receivables have been improved. Facilities rental fees, this is the revenue is $676,000, 20% of the non-tax revenue. The building permit fees, $500,000, almost 15%. We have various grants that we receive, and that makes up 10% of the non-tax revenues. There's some revenues in the cemeteries, planning and building. Department has $115,000 of revenue. There's some miscellaneous revenue, and what we have this year, we have a one-time transfer from the MCC reserve. If you recall, we have a reserve of about $950,000 that we start off at the beginning of, in 2018, we had that reserve. That reserve was set up to fund construction bridge loan. And so we've estimated how much of that we're going to use for 2019, and we have about $425,000 of that left. And we felt that we could use that reserve, the funds from that reserve, to offset the increase in the MCC, the deficit that we have. So one of the focus that we really want to work on this year is, as I mentioned earlier, we haven't completed a full year of operating the MCC, so there's a lot of things that we need to look at. We need to look at the delivery model. We need to look at, what's causing the utilities to be as high as they are. Council has recommended and established a utility sustainability committee, which will focus on looking at different ways to see how we can bring those numbers down. So we felt that in 2019, if we can offset that increase in the MCC budget by dollars that we have in the reserve, it'll buy us some time to really analyze the operations of the MCC and see how we can bring those numbers down. This one here, this is basically the chart that I just showed you, just with the numbers. I always think sometimes it's easier to look at numbers through a pie chart. And so this, once again, it just shows you the increases and decreases. So the increase in the facility rentals obviously is with regards to now having a full year of facility rentals. As I mentioned earlier, our collections for taxes are better, therefore Residences are paying less in interest charges, which is good. Community services, that is the recreation. There's been an increase there. Supplementals, that number is actually lower. The number that we had last year in the budget was higher because of all the growth, so that number is a difficult number to estimate when the supplementals will come in, so we just brought it in line to what we think is a realistic number. Then there's the transfer from the MCC reserve of $425,000, and then there's just some other additional grants that we received. So that in total are the summary of all of the revenues. Then you can see from the taxation revenue, we have payments in lieu of taxes, and then we have the taxation revenue. So our total budget is $17.3 million. So that jumped from $15.5 million. So the tax levy proposed increase. So looking at the total expenditures and the total non-tax revenues, we have a total increase of 9.13%. There's an assessment growth. So the growth in 2018 was 2.01%. So that is new growth, new taxes coming from new properties, and that decreased that number. So the impact to the existing residences is 7.12%. And I just wanted just to mention to council that, you know, a lot of work has been done by staff to bring that number down, because when we started at the beginning of the budget process, that number was much, much higher. So we went through line by line to bring that number down. And there are things in the 2019 budget that are out of staff's control, and I think that's the issue that we face this year with the budget. With it's not just, you know, what's the increase to the base budget. We had some pretty big ticket items that impacted us. So some of the things that are highlighted here, we do have a staff increase, the climate change position, but that's covered 80% by a grant. We also have the senior living grant, and then there was some organizational changes that occurred in 2019, and then some increases to merit, equity, and benefits. Contracted services have gone up for the MCC, and I've got a detail on that line on the next slide, and I'll go through that in detail. There were reserve transfers for the community improvement plan and the development charge exemptions. So the last council approved $150,000 to the CIP program, and that is something that just automatically rolled into this budget. We have a reserve transfer for roads contingencies of $250,000. This is an amount that we have to pay out, and that's been identified there. Debt payments on the new debenture and increase in the variable interest rates. So this is the $4 million. As you recall, in my other presentation that I did, we have on the books over $4 million of capital projects that were completed and were approved by council to issue debt. So we're coming to council now to say this is the time that we need to issue that debt. The projects are finished, and we need to replenish the cash. So the practice here at the town and many municipalities are that when a capital project has been approved with debt to fund the project, normally the town would pay for the project, and then once the project is completed and we know the final numbers, then we issue the debt. So these projects are completed, and we're ready now to issue the debt to replenish the cash. We have increases of $44,000 to the library, and that has to do some with salary increases and others with their janitorial service. They used to have a part-time person that used to clean the library. That person retired, and now they're using contracted services. The utilities increase for the full year of the MCC is $365,000. So that alone is a big ticket item. Increased in legal fees, that's another $50,000, and that better reflects what the legal fees have been for the town. We do have some savings. This is just other lines and different savings that we have had in the budget of $120,000 to offset some of those increases. And then we have increases in revenues. Some of those are grant-related. And then there was the increase in the growth. So for the total net operating budget increase is almost $892,000. So that's the net increase from last year. So what does that mean to the tax levy? So this is just an illustration that if someone's property tax value is at $250,000, then the annual rate increase of the 7.12% would be $85 for the year. At $350,000 is about $119, and at $450,000 is $153. This is not an exact number because people's taxes, their tax levy increases varies depending on when the assessments have happened, but this is a good illustration of what does 7.12% mean to a resident. This is a chart in your binder that shows the actual year-over-year assessment changes in the different categories. And then this is the actual assessment growth in 2018. So you see the first column is the opening assessment for the town in the various categories, and then the balance at the end of December. So that's where we get our growth number in the categories. And so you've seen this before, but I always think it's an important slide because everyone wants to know, where do my property taxes go? If you recall that the town collects taxes on behalf of, for the town's services and programs, but also for the region and also for education. So an average home at about $338,000 of an assessment value. Don't forget, that's not market value, that's assessment value. I know people think, wow, that number is really low, but it's based on a 2016 assessment value that over 4 years is gradually increasing. So, and the annual property tax for that is $4,321, of which 39% of that is the town, 48% goes to the region, and 13% goes to education. So that's where the taxes go. So saying that, because we have 3 different components to your property tax, it's called, what we have is a blended rate. So even though our portion could be going up 7.12%, there's a different amount for the region. So the number necessarily isn't as high as 7.12 because they're going up at different levels and there's different proportions. So this chart here is always a good chart that shows, the blue is the Niagara region. So when you do pay your property taxes, what services and programs am I receiving? And so the navy blue is the region, the services that they're providing. The green are the services that the town of Pelham is providing, and the red is the education component. So if you look at that, we mentioned earlier, the biggest cost to the region is the police service, and the biggest cost to the town are the roads, the public works department. So the roads, water, winter control, and water and wastewater. So that's the biggest one. So operating expenses for 2019, once again, the pie chart. So the largest 50% of the expenses for the 2019 budget goes to transportation services, and that is the public works department. Health services is really the cemetery. It's just a category that's described by the province. We put under that name. Recreation and cultural services is at 14%. The planning department, 6.7%. General government, that is the CAO's office, the council, the HR department is in there, and the marketing department is in that category. There's the clerk's department, corporate services, and protection services. That would be the fire department. And I think the building's in there as well. So under the major expenses, once again, we broke this out even further, and you can look around and see, okay, where obviously the biggest ticket item that we have here are the wages at 30.4%, benefits at 7.8%, contracted services 9.4%. We have the transfer to reserves at $3.3 million. Don't forget that $3.2 million of that is going to capital projects. So that's where the money is, raised through the tax levy, and then we transfer $3.2 million to cover all of those capital items that council has approved. Debt, 9.1% is covering the debt that we have. The library is at 5%, so 5% of the expenses is going to support the library. We've got fleet at 1.4, utilities at 5.4, insurance, I'm just seeing if there's any other big ticket item. And then there's a whole other category of other, which is made up of smaller amounts. But that, in a pie there, you can actually see where the expenses are for the town. And this is just the breakdown in the categories, and we talked about most of them, of why we have those increases. So contracted services, this one here I wanted to pull out. So what is the increase from last year? So we have the strategic plan. We have a consultant that's hired to do our strategic plan, and we also have now an integrity commissioner, so that's $25,000. The fire department has a new software support of $19,000. They have received new radios, and that helps to support them. The MCC maintenance and janitorial services of $125,000. Snow removal, $15,000. The gypsy moth spray, we included $25,000 to deal with the issues of the gypsy moth. And then the transit, the second bus for the transit is at $110,000. So that makes up the contracted services. Proposed new staffing. There's two. The climate change coordinator, this is a special grant that we received. 80% of that is funded by the grant, and it's only a 2-year term position. So after the 2 years, the position is finished. It does not become full-time. And we also have, and we were one of 59 municipalities that received that grant. So we were fortunate to get that. And we also have a part-time position in the tradesperson, just with the larger facility, and that person is there to help out. The Meridian Community Center. So here is a summary. Let's go from, let's start from the right and go left. I know I should do the other way around, but the furthest column to the right is the 2018 budget. That was the budget that was approved by council. The 2018, after that is the 2018 actual. This was a 6-month budget last year. 6 months as far as expenses, but I would say the revenues were about 4 months. By the time we got the operation started, it was about 4 months. That's why there's a bit of a shortfall in the revenues. The salaries are there. Utilities, it was budgeted 104, and they came in at 305. Contracted services, those are services for the maintenance of the building. Contracted janitorial, when the original budget was struck, there was part-time staff that was budgeted in the salary line. We went out for an RFP, and it was more economical to have contracted janitorial services, so we awarded the janitorial services. They're outsourced, and that's why the line has moved down. And then where you see less the existing salaries, so part of the pro forma, what they said is, just show us what the net new increases are to the MCC. So we subtracted the staff that we had when we had just the old arena. And then, as you could see in 2018, in the actual, we have a shortfall this year of $337,000. Mostly pertaining to the utilities and some of the other, and the contracted services. So I wanted to show the 2019, the original pro forma. This is what was part of the pro forma for the MCC. And there's the revenue. Actually, our projected revenue is close to that. The salaries were 1.3, but included in that number were the contracted janitorial, and I broke that out into the proposed budget. I broke out the janitorial. I moved it down the line. For some reason, then the utilities were at $201,000, and we're budgeting $562,000. That's a more realistic number for the utilities. So that was off in the pro forma. The contracted services, for some reason, the contracted services were not budgeted in the pro forma, so those are all the maintenance agreements that we have for the various systems, the HVAC system and all the other systems. So they weren't there. The janitorial's next, and then other categories, those are almost bang on. And then we have, once again, less existing salaries. So in the original pro forma, it showed we would have a deficit of almost 79,000, and ours is coming in at 488,000. That's why, and that's part of the increase in the 2019 operating budget. Okay. Pelham Transit, the ridership in 2018 was 6521, in 2017 was 3,044, so we have an increase of 2,977 riders, and that's an 84% increase. And this is the Pelham Transit. So we received a second grant for the second bus right now in the 2019 budget. We have scheduled the second bus to start in September. So this gives us some time to see, how all that's going to work out. And so there's the grants in the 2019 budget, the ridership revenue, there's revenue for that, and there's some sponsorship. So the total revenue is about 211,000. We have to allocate salaries. You can see the existing salary, the same format as we did for the MCC. We have to show the staff that are working on the transit, but they're not new dollars. That's why you see the existing salaries being subtracted out. There's the increase because of the second bus. So there is a deficit of 123,000, and that amount was approved by the previous council of about $145,000 for this operating budget for the second bus. We had to get that approval in order for us to sign off on the grant, the $500,000 grant.
Can I, sorry to interrupt you.
No, of course, go ahead.
So you're saying that today we have no voting power to take that away from the budget, the operating budget?
So we signed back with regards to the grant, right, Vicki? We have signed off on the grant that by accepting the grant, we're accepting that the town is contributing $123,000 for that bus. Now, we're all aware, and I think the mayor, you probably can inform us better, that the region will be taking on the intermunicipal transit in a couple years, but that is just the linking points. We still have to always maintain a bus within the town in order for the residences to be able to connect to the main transit.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so if my math, it's about $40,000 grant from 2018 to 2019. So for $40,000, we're going to go in debt for 123. Does that make sense? I don't understand how a previous council could put this on us. And I'm going to fight to get that off, because our citizens deserve better than that. Okay? And it just infuriates me that we were going to have two buses in this community. It just doesn't make sense. But go on and continue. We'll argue that point later, or discuss that point later.
We can get your feedback. Right now, this is what was directed to us. So council approved that, the former council, and so it was an approval, and we had to incorporate that in the budget because we were directed to do so. And, okay, so operating budget. So these are the operating budgets that, for some reason, Nancy, I can't see the bottom of my sheet here.
I think the slide was too long when it was.
No, it's just, okay, that's okay.
Can you change the view?
Yeah, it's splitting my screen, sorry. That's okay, I'm just gonna flip here. I probably know everything, but I just wanna make sure. Okay. One second. Let's see. I don't know why I did. My notes on that. Oh, there it is, okay, thank you. Thanks, Charlotte. Okay. So we have here, this is the fire and bylaw services. So these budgets here are by department. So we have the salary increases for the volunteer firefighter points. There was a slight increase. Increase in the cost of the software and equipment for the new radios, and addition of one crossing guard. And we also have a decrease in the animal control just from just some of the negotiations with the Humane Society. And if you have any questions when we're going through these, just ask. This one here, schedule. So this is the transportation, which is Public Works. Just going through some of the notes, we have an increase, as I mentioned earlier, of the Climate Change Coordinator, which is funded 80% by a grant. There's a half year for the principal and interest payments on the proposed $4 million loan. So when you take out a debenture from the region, the first year you're just paying half of the interest and the principal, and then the next year it becomes a full amount. The utilities, there's an increase to the utilities due to the full year of operations of the MCC, an increase in the janitorial and maintenance contracts for the MCC. So this is the whole budget all under the Director of Public Works budget. Contracted services for grass cutting, it moved from the road department to beautification, so you'll see one going up and one going down, and plus we added the gypsy moths, the spraying of the gypsy moths. And there's an increase in reserves for the contingencies of $250,000 that we talked about earlier. In the winter control, we have an increase in salt and sand, and that is just to better reflect the actual expenses that we've been incurring in the last few years. The fuel amount has increased, and that once again is just to adjust it to what prior year's actuals have been. The airport amount is lower because this year we're only showing operations. Last year there was a couple of loans that they had to take out, so this year we don't have the loans. Okay, Schedule 6 is the cemetery, and there's just no increases there, very minor. Schedule 7 is recreation and cultural services. So some of the wages have been allocated to transit to reflect the program. It's important for the transit program and the grants that we receive that we do allocate salary costs to that. So that's why we have to show that. Increase in materials are offset by revenues. There's a new programmer, which is funded by the Senior Active Living Grant, so you'll see the expenses going up for the salaries, but there's a grant associated with that. There were some global salary adjustments to the base. The Mayor's Youth Advisory Council moved from the Clerk's Department to the Recreation Department. Increase in the transit due to the second bus that was approved by the previous council. And the library increases janitorial and salaries, so we covered these. The next one is community planning and development. So prior year global salary allocation adjusted the base. A transfer to reserve is the community improvement plan of $150,000, and that was once again approved by council. Building inspectors, they're being contracted out, so there's a decrease from the full-time to the contracted out line. And building expenses are equal to revenue, so in the building budget, any extra revenue automatically gets transferred to the building reserve. And the municipal drain reserve was established in 2017, and there's just a small allocation to that. Oops, is that the right one? So, Schedule 23, debentures and debt. So, as of December 31st, 2018, the existing debentures that we have are just slightly over $30 million. There's the construction bridge loan that was used to, was taken out to complete the MCC at $13.5 million. And then our projected bank indebtedness is at $1,250,000. So the construction bridge loan will be paid by the land sales by the end of 2019, with $1.7 million being debentured and paid by the donation pledges. So that's the current plan. And With the cash that's being replenished by the $4 million debenture, the town would no longer be in a bank indebtedness position. This is the first time in a decade. So the goal here is to start replenishing the cash for the town, and this is one of the first steps, is to take out the debenture that was approved when those projects were approved. So this graph here, this is the debt. So the town has to, the town cannot exceed 25% of, the debt can't exceed 25% of the revenue for the town. So what this shows here, there's 3 lines, so let's start off with the blue line. The blue line is the debt as of the net revenue existing. So this is what we have right now. So in 2019, we're at 14%. So if we don't take out any more debts, we're at 14%. And the maximum is 25. So we're here. This does not count the bridge. The bridge loan is not here. So if we,
excuse me, through you, if we add the bridge loan, where does that give us?
21%. So we still don't exceed the 25 with the bridge loan.
Thank you.
And that was in the notes as well. So the red is the debt, the existing debt, and the approved debt. So this is the approved amount of the capital projects, the $4 million. That would get us to 15.3%. And then the green is the existing debt, the existing approved and proposed debt. So the proposed one is what, Shred? No, I'm confused. Is that the water wastewater?
The proposed is the 1.7 million.
Oh, yes, okay,
pledges.
yes. Okay.
And then beginning in 2020, it includes the BMA water wastewater project.
Okay, so in the green one includes the existing debt, the $4 million of that's been already approved for those capital projects, and the proposed is the 1.7 million from the construction bridge loan. And then the years after that, starting in 2020, is the proposed debentures for the water wastewater. So when we brought the water wastewater budget last week and we saw the presentation from BMA, they recommended that certain capital projects were done for water wastewater, and this is what the debt was going to be. This is to show here, we wanted to make sure that council was aware, in order to follow the financial sustainability of the water wastewater, that to show that we are well within the limit of taking the debt out and covering those projects for water wastewater. So this is what the graph looks like. So as I mentioned, the annual repayment limit cannot exceed 25%. So currently we're at 14. And then with existing and approved, the approved is the $4 million, because when the projects were approved, the debt was approved as well at that time, and that was 15.3%. And then existing approved, plus we're asking for the new $1.7 million proposed, it'll become at 16%. Okay, the 2019 cash strategy. So, you've heard me talk all the time about cash because that's important. The cash strategy is that the debentures are critical for the strategic direction to start replenishing the cash balances. The town will eliminate the short-term borrowing using the line of credit and operate within a positive cash flow. That's the goal. The goal is not to have a bank indebtedness at the end of the year. Cash management policies will be developed to ensure that the cash funds on hand will be on hand for reserves and deferred revenue balances. So that's the safeguarding of the cash. So this is the first step. The next step is when East Fawn Hill starts to develop, we will be getting the funds from the developers to replenish the cash that was used to upfront those costs as well. And that's it. And I'm open for questions.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, are we going through line for line, or are we just going to?
How does council want to do this?
I'd like to go line for line.
Yep. Okay.
So back to the beginning. So are we starting right after Schedule 1, or should we go to the departments? Probably want to go to the departments, I would think. Whatever you guys want.
We have the schedules here, and I think in the presentation,
There's one schedule missing from there, though.
yes.
Schedule 3 was not on there.
Schedule 3 was missing?
We received one tonight.
You just saw that now?
General governance.
Oh, okay. Do you want us to make copies and give it to you? Because we have them right here. Sorry about that. Okay, so, is it on the web?
In eScribe.
Oh, it's in eScribe. Okay, it is in eScribe, but do you want copies, or do you want to look through eScribe? I can
We're
look-
okay in e-scribe for now, but if we get copies for our book would be good.
I've got it for my book.
Maybe they missed some. Yeah.
The presentation, it's in the book.
Yeah,
The presentation? Oh,
yeah, I got it.
that happened.
Yeah, it's in here, 3.
Okay.
We got all,
We're
we got
good.
it?
Yeah, keep her going.
Oh, no, because Schedule 3 is, oh, it's the general government, okay. All right, let's go. Do you want to start off with Schedule 1, with the revenues? Any questions on the revenue sheet?
So the only question I have is public transit. So you're saying the total, what we collect is $211,953 with grants. Is that the total?
Yeah, what's showing up in that?
And, okay, so that includes the grant,
Let's go back to this. It's easier in this one.
Schedule 1.
There's the public transit, that one there. Oops. So the grant is 184,000, and then we have people paying, there's some ridership revenue of 20,000, and then there's some sponsors on the bus.
So the grant's 184, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So the grant's 184,
Yeah,
and total revenue for just the, what we expect is 211,000.
yeah, that's correct. Yes,
Okay.
go ahead, John.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sorry. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 184 includes the regions
Yes.
portion. The region, this year, we have worked with the region so that they will start paying for the link. Right now, our dollars pay to go into Welland, to Niagara College, and Seaway Mall to link up with the regional transit and the Brock link and Glendale campus link. And we've met with them through the region's new transportation policy that they're trying to implement now. Their mandate is to provide the links. At this point, they cannot provide a bus from the MCC to those locations because the bus that they would provide is, if you want to call it the Rocket or whatever, it's packed, going from Brock to Niagara and so forth. So at this point, we've asked them to then pay us for the link so that we can provide other services within town. And so that's a portion of it. I think it's just under 100,000.
Six-
Oh, what's the number, Charlotte?
I'm sorry.
62,500. So we've prorated that for the
Oh,
portion
yeah,
of the year. when
this
we
is
have the
starting in
second bus.
September. Nothing would start prior to September with the link.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is the grants.
So the grant is prorated based on the second bus starting in September.
Councilor Hahn?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just wondering, as far as the ridership numbers go, how do we collect those numbers? Is that like the bus driver's got a little punch and he punches how many people are on per day and adds them up? Or like, where do those numbers come from?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we collect data every day. Every day, they have a data sheet that they tick off, whether it's a student, whether it's, morning, afternoon, if it's a senior, all the data that we need. At the end of the year, the beginning of, like, for instance, in April, we will have what is called the CUDA reports that we report back to the MTO on our ridership, the costs of operating, our revenues as well. And we need all of that data to be able to report back. And out of that is what they determine our provincial gas tax is. The provincial gas tax funding is not included in these revenues, correct?
I think, Charlotte, is the gas tax included in these revenues?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a portion of the MTO grant, which was signed at $100,000 per year, so we assumed 6 months of that towards the second bus. Then the provincial gas tax, and then the region portion for $62,500. So that all combined is the grant revenue that was budgeted for 2019.
Councillor Wink?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so we had an 83% increase in ridership. But if you look at 2017 actuals of 18, no, I don't need to see that one anymore. The ridership, our income was 18,361, yet 2018 was 21,376. So that certainly isn't an 83% increase in revenues. And now in 2019, we're projecting lower revenues, yet we're going to have 2 buses. So can you please explain that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So depending on the ridership, depends on, the type of ridership depends on the revenues. So anyone with a U-Pass, we do not get dollars daily from those revenues. We have an agreement with Brock and Niagara College, which they pay us. So, for instance, in 2018, we could have had additional paying ridership and so forth.
So is UPass then paying us a flat rate as opposed
Correct.
to $2.75 a ride?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. That is correct. So as our ridership goes up, as we get more students relying on the bus, the ridership goes up, but our revenues do not from the ridership. Where we do get the money, which is in addition to, is when it comes to the CUDA, the gas tax. And depending on the gas tax, it is based on how much money the municipality puts towards the actual operating costs, as well as the ridership and the population. So, for instance, the first year we received the gas tax, we received $147,000 from the provincial gas tax. The second year, we used the money from the gas tax, the $147,000, to offset the operating costs. And we were told if you use your gas tax to offset your operating costs, if the municipality is not paying towards the operation of your transit, you will be penalized. But that is the way it was budgeted, that is what was approved, and we used the funding. As a result, this year, instead of getting 147 or more because our ridership went up, we will receive $51,000. So it dropped by basically $100,000. The key to transit, we're finding that the municipality, the MTO, their operating format, whatever, they want to see that the municipalities that are running the transit have a buy-in to operating transit. So what we are understanding that the key is about $200,000 a year of actual costs towards the municipality. If you approve that, your gas tax will stay at a higher rate, and that is what we're basically our operating budget is indicating now. So last year it cost the town an additional like $218,000 instead of the you don't have the figure here, but 2016 it was basically $84,000.
So if I can just add something from
Yes.
the region's point of view. She's exactly right. We got 150,000, we dropped down to 51,000. So what the region is going to do to get that gas tax back into the region is they will now apply for that gas tax from the region, and then they will make a deal with us to be negotiated between 100 and 130,000, so that they will get they'll get probably $30,000 or $40,000 of what would usually come to us, but at least it's staying in the region, and we will go back up again because it's actually us that's bringing it in. So the region, like I say, they're spending big on transportation. They're buying 14 new buses to do the municipal. The cost at the region has gone from 23 million to, I believe, $36 million this year. They're spending big on transportation because they realize that transportation is what is going to get people to the jobs within the region. I'll tell you right now that to go back here would be a big step backwards for this community. That's my opinion.
If I could just say, in working with the MTO, the original, 3 years ago, the original grant, you know, the community transportation grant, it was the first time they offered it. They offered it to, I think it was 18 municipalities across the region. We received, the province, we received the 100,000. We started our transit out. They worked with us. We worked hand in hand to make this thing happen. Of course, they wanted to make it happen as well. They, out of those 15 municipalities, there may have been 7 that were successful. We were one of them. They've invited us to speak everywhere. We're basically a example. Then the year after, you know, we lobbied for additional funding because, okay, you got us going, now we need additional funding. We received another 50,000. And again, we worked with them to make sure, I think we just finalized the last 50,000, right, this week. In applying for the new grant 2 years ago, again, we're at the point that it seems odd that we need 2 buses. The issue is we're wearing out the bus. It's running 11 hours a day, the same bus. It's got 300,000 kilometers on it. And the other issue is it takes over an hour to meet our link. So we're not providing the service that needs to be provided. We also have the on-demand in the specialized transit. we need to be able to accommodate the specialized transit so that they do have, can accommodate scooters and so forth. So that is what the grant is about. Across the region, when everyone was applying, Niagara-on-the-Lake applied for it, Port Colborne applied for it, Fort Erie applied for it, the region applied for it, we applied for it. We're the only ones that got it. Again, $500,000 over the next 5 years. With that, so with the 500,000, figures 650,000 just on grants for our, sorry, Teresa.
That's okay, no, go ahead.
For our transit system. That's not counting the amount of money that we will be receiving for the gas tax. Now, since we have the capacity, we should be receiving at least $150,000 a year in gas tax. And you figure that in the next 5 years, it's well over $1 million that we are being subsidized by the province to run this transit. All I know is that we are improving the quality of life in town. We are taking seniors to day programs. We are taking students to work. We're bringing students in by the connections to the university and so forth. We're a small town, and what really, I think at the end of the day, we have to look at what's ahead of us. The region has a mandate. They're going to implement transit. It's only one tax dollar. We're the same people that will be paying for regional transit. Right now, we're paying $64 an hour for our transit system. They pay well over $100. If we're not in control of our own transit system, they will be, and we will be paying. No different than Waynfleet, West Lincoln. It's only Waynfleet, West Lincoln, Grimsby now without a transit system. Everyone else has their own transit system. And at one point, when we first started this in 2016, halfway through the year, I had a call from the MTO office because we have to submit mid-term reports and so forth. And they said to me, Vicki, you can't make money at transit, because that's what it was looking like we were doing. Because at that time, we started to sell we had one bus. We weren't running 11 hours a day. We weren't meeting the demand. So our ridership was low because people had to get to school or get to work at a certain time, and we just didn't have the schedules or the money to do it. But we had the support of the community. So we were increasing our revenues along with our grant. Our costs were very low, and I knew at the end of the day we wouldn't be making money, but we were close. In other municipalities, they are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for transit, and they don't blink an eye. And I know it's tough in Pelham to come up with dollars. To me, we have it now. We see people using it. We get thanked every day. It's 6,000 people last year. If we don't have it, if we go back on our commitments with the province, it would be difficult to start getting transit funding again for the town, I believe, only because they've been so supportive. But I know it's a tough decision. I know. That's all. I'm down.
Let's go to the bot. Councillor Hildebrand?
My e-scribe is missing Schedule 1, 2, and 3. Is that really the fact, or is there a special schedule I should be looking at?
I'll direct you to the clerk on that.
I didn't update it today.
Charlotte, is it Charlotte?
I'll double check that. Well, I just have to go into a different part of the system, so I'll double check it. Not in e-scribe, it's in
Because
the
mine
binder.
starts at Schedule 4
Sorry,
under
it's
operating
in
budgets,
it's in the budget binder.
But the whole thing
which I
should be
don't have.
uploaded.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hahn then?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering, So how do we go about determining this, the demand, the schedule? So you said 11 hours a day is what the bus is being used, obviously, so then rationale for a second bus, so on and so forth. But I can imagine peak hours, so when people are going to work or going to school, coming home from work and coming home from school. So the rest of the time frame, how do you go about determining that demand? Again, is it just leaving it up to the bus driver to say how many people are standing at the bus stop at that particular time of day, or how do you come up with the schedule? Because of course the schedule is going to equate to how many routes and times and pickups, which is the use on the bus for 11 hours a day.
Correct. So we have, so on the conventional route, through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, on the conventional route, we would have every stop within the route. So I always thought, honestly, when we first started this, it'd be no different than any other program that we ran. After about 6 months, we could figure it out and we knew exactly who was going to get on when. It changes with every semester, it changes with every work schedule, it changes with every hair appointment, you know, like there's certain people that you can count on at certain days to be at a certain stop. And there's other, it's come and go, it's basically, we can track how many people we pick up. I can tell you exactly by all the, what time of the day we're picking up people at certain times, where we're dropping them off.
So I guess to my question then, so you're logging it via
Logging it. It's manual right now.
by the driver, saying,
Correct.
you know, this
It
time
is-
of day, this is how many people I
yeah.
picked up at that particular stop.
Correct. And it is, in the process through the region, there will be, right now we have a manual lockbox. We have 2 of them. They drop them off. It's cashed in every Monday morning, along with the sheets. So it's balanced, basically. The region will be implementing electronic fare boxes, along with maybe the Presto card or some kind of an electronic card. Also, what they will be implementing is fares that you don't have to pay for fares linking. I don't quite understand all that yet. I think that's coming down the road, and Jason's gonna understand it soon, so you don't have to worry about it. But the region does have a full system that they are planning on implementing, and you will see that as the months and years go by, more and more will be implemented right across the region so that it will be uniform. By September, all of the transit rates will be the same across the region. Ours are basically what they're proposing. Anything else you know?
So further to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, so the reason I mention that is because there's been many times where just at different times throughout the day, not peak times, there's maybe only 1 or 2 people on the whole bus.
Yep.
So just, you know, trying to rationalize, we're running 1 bus, now we got 2 buses, and there's really 1 or 2
Okay.
people on board. So it is also, too, the driver is contracted, a salary, is it like a rented driver? What's the scenario
Yeah.
there? Because in other words, like, are they incentivized to put perhaps more people on the bus than what are actually on
Yeah.
the bus? Because how do we double check that? How do we verify that?
Okay, so through you, Mr. Mayor, the contract that we have with Sharp Bus Lines, they provided the vehicle, they provide the bus, the wages, the gas, they provide everything. We just pay them a flat rate. That's it. What was the other question? I'm sorry.
It was the one question, but I justified why I was asking it.
Oh, and can I just say, it's a little confusing with the bus. It isn't like you're going to see 2 buses going down the street. You won't. You will see, like all the way to Fenwick. You won't. They will link. So the new bus will do the half hour back and forth and 10 minutes within the community as well. So then they'll link at the MCC, and then the the one bus will be heading to the regional link and picking up anyone off of the other bus, and it'll be continual.
Councilor Stewart.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you're saying that the bus that we have is old, it's got 300,000 kilometers on it. So you're going to continue running this bus and then add a second bus? Or I would have thought you would be doing a replacement bus.
So, we met with Sharp Bus Lines, just trying to prepare for, because it takes time for them to get vehicles and so forth. So, we met with them last week, and we have asked for, well, our bus right now, it is more and more in the shop, getting fixed or doing so forth. So we have suggested that that would be our specialized bus, and they would be putting on 2 new buses.
So that would mean we would have 3 buses.
Well, you do now. You have 2 buses now, but the one bus is a school bus, providing specialized and on demand. The small school bus is everything is accessible, whether it is, they can fit the scooters and so forth. Yeah, so we've requested that all units within the municipality will be transit units.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I really have trouble with the numbers. You know, the bus is running for 11 hours a day. How many days a week?
6.
6 days a week. So that's 66 hours a week. And over the month of February, we had 464 riders. That's 15 riders a day in 11 hours. It just, I have a hard time having it make any sense in my head. And then to have 2 buses.
The second bus is your link.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to go to Schedule 2, and I don't know if I'm going forward. But in 2018, on the transit, right, total revenue was 200, or total cost was 218,850. Now, this year, you're asking us to spend $442.86, of an increase of $224,000. We're asking our citizens to pay that extra.
So, yeah, so Charlotte, do you want to talk about that? Or just, that's not the net new cost.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that includes an allocation of salaries and benefits from existing staff, because we're trying to demonstrate to the grant organizations the contribution that the town's making towards that program in terms of our staff time. So those costs are not new costs.
To you, Mr. Mayor.
So if you look at the Schedule 7, you see the breakdown there between salaries and benefits,
Okay, so
materials.
I'm confused. So, through you, Mr. Mayor, we pay $60 an hour to get a bus. Who owns the bus? Who owns the employee? I'm getting confused here.
Sharp, the contracted service.
So why are we paying to fix the bus if it's a contract? Like, do we own the bus?
Yeah, no. We don't pay to fix the bus, they are.
Sure.
We only paying $60.
So what do I, through you, what do we care if there's 400,000 kilometers on a bus? We don't pay for it, okay? I'm just trying to, we're confused here, and I'm.
Let them answer. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Vicky. Yeah, have you got an answer to that, Vicky, or not?
Well, all I can say is the bus keeps breaking down.
So it's not operating, I think that's what she's saying.
It's operating
So
and
it-
it breaks down, it's
so-
just getting older.
So, as an operator or a person that's providing, that's not my problem. That's the bus driver's problem and the company's problem, not mine. okay? It's,
We're not paying for that, though.
okay, but anyway, I understand that. It just, I can't see why we're gonna do this.
So the net cost is 123,000. So when you look at that
I-
slide there, that's the
Yes,
cost.
I understand, but we're bleeding from the MCC, and now you're asking us to put a second bus on, and to me, I'm just working out the math. If I subtract 442,000 minus the revenue of 211, and I know it shows a cost of 230,000, that works out to $19,000 a month, and we have ridership of, say, 350. That's $42 per ride. We could get an Uber driver to drive less than that. And did anybody ever look at Peterborough? Peterborough's doing it. It just, I'm sorry, I'm a math guy, and
Yeah, Vicky will answer that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Kaur, I totally agree with you. Transit is a crazy amount of money, but that's what it is. Uber, we have looked into it. It is very difficult to get a scooter into a Uber vehicle. And at the time, when we did look into it, it just wasn't available. I have to tell you that between the region, we have a presentation coming up with regard to a on-demand service, Uber. It's not Uber, it's something else. And the name of it, I can't remember, but they will be, and I don't know if it was approved in the budget. They were waiting for budget approval to have this consultant come in.
And do the study.
And do the study. And at that time, we will be changing if it's good for us in providing the Uber on-demand service. But that's
And
I can't commit to it.
And
'cause I
that's
don't-
part of the reason why the second bus is not starting until September, if we do start the second bus, because it buys us that time for us to wait for the region to do that review with the consultants to see if we can get this Uber type of service for the region. And then we don't have to, then we could use those dollars to support that and not get the second bus. So the only concern here is the grant is.
I understand the grant, and your numbers show that the grant's either 50,000, but it's costing us more than what the grant is. And, you know, it's no different than my wife purchasing a Michael Kors purse and says it's, you know, you're saving $300 when the purse is $400. Well, I don't have $400 for you to buy the purse, so put it back. So that's what we need to do here, guys. I'm sorry, I'm here to save the taxpayers' money, and having a two-bus system in this town at this time, and the way we're bleeding everywhere else, is the wrong thing to send a message to our citizens, and I will not vote for that, so. That's all I'm gonna say.
Councilor Corr, Councilor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, is it possible to provide us further numbers if we did not add the second bus? What would it look like?
Look at that.
So,
Because I'm sure we're still going to be running at a deficit.
through
Yeah.
you, Mr. Mayor, you will be running at a deficit, and that's without funding. So we would look at the funding, and we would be giving it back.
No, that's expected.
We can bring that back.
So what does council want to do here? I saw. But, Bob?
He's waving his hand.
I thought you
No,
were
Bob.
Ann. I
No,
thought-
I was doing that for Bob.
Okay, go ahead, Maria. Councilor.
Councillor Hildebrand, did you have a question?
No, I'm just having a very difficult time hearing the answers that I'm getting from the recreation director. That's the only thing. So I don't have a question. I'm just hearing half the discussion from her. But other than that, it's fine at this stage. I've heard all the other councilors and their comments.
And one further,
Councilor, you didn't have one?
No, I was just waving my hand so for
Okay.
you to get Bob's attention.
I just want to,
Councilor Trophy.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, then I would agree with Councilor Wink that let's get a study prior to making any decision. before we get a second bus.
Councilor Court?
Just for you, our deficit on the transit last year was $53,000. If my,
That's the budget. For 2018 was 115,000.
115?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna almost,
Deficit for
we're almost
2018.
gonna double it, so, okay.
Well, no, now it's 123. It's going to 123. So
Okay.
look at that chart there. So it's 115, and it's going to 123. We have to back out the existing salaries. We just have to show it as an allocation. That's the net cost. So for example, a portion of Vicky's salary is being charged to transit because we have to
Okay,
show.
I just don't get that part, but anyway, okay.
They're doing it just for the gas tax.
We have to show the true costs because someone has to administer that. So a portion of Vicky's
So
time is going towards
So
that.
$107 of her time is spent on
Oh,
transit?
not just her, there's other people, there's Karen, there's the person answering the phone, there's other people, we have it broken down. So the net cost for 2018 is 115,629, and the net cost budgeted for 2019 is 123,241. And that's with the second bus starting in September.
So it also shows that we're, through you, Mr. Mayor, so we're gonna increase salaries too in 2009.
No.
People are gonna, for 2 buses, we're gonna increase it by.
No, it's not. The salaries come out. The salaries are just an allocation. So you see the salaries and benefits, 107,000, and then they're backed out because these people are doing other work. So if the buses weren't there, these positions would still be there.
So this make it clear, I'm a little confused. So why even bother putting it in?
Because we have to show that the town is contributing Vicky's time, Karen's time, people's time, that we reach a certain dollar amount to get the grant money. We have to show them that the town is actually spending people's time doing this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's to get the grant.
So is that what council wants to do then? We want to have a study brought forward by Vicky, by Ms. Van Ravensway, and Vicky, so if we turn down that grant, that's the only grant we have right now on transportation, is the 500,000. Okay.
Well, it's
1,000 a year.
500,000 over
It's
5 years,
500,000.
100,000 a year.
And may I also point out that transportation is for the people that don't have cars, they're for the elderly, they're for the people that maybe are, that don't have the money to afford a car, a student. So, yes, dollars and cents are very important. I just wonder how the public is gonna feel, knowing that this is one of the things we cut, and the seniors don't get to go out to do their shopping. The student has to find another way. I realize it's a cost that is not a cost that is unbearable, and every other community is bearing it for the sake of their people. I think that this is a very backward thing to be looking at, to tell you the honest truth, and that's my opinion. So,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're not debating that we don't want transit, but at this time, I'm saying we don't need 2 buses at this time. In the future, when we get our finances in order and we get control of this MCC, I'd be the first one to say we need more transit, okay? But at this time, do we really need to have that? And we're selling off properties, and we're telling taxpayers that if we don't sell off a certain portion of our prime real estate, that your taxes are going up. It's just a little bit confusing. We're telling them one thing, but we're spending on the other side. So I'm just saying that at this time, having 2 buses does not make sense in the town of Pelham. And
well, I can't help but put forward that if we lose the $500,000 grant, that A, we reduce the transit, and our cost stays the same. But anyway, go ahead, Ms. Van Ravensway.
excuse me, to answer that question, through you, Mr. Mayor, we already got the 500 grant for the 1 bus. You're saying,
No.
so you're saying that we're gonna get $500,000 for the other bus?
Yes, that's, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is what the money is for the second bus. We will get nothing if we cancel the agreement. Although, because, so this is the original funding under the other provincial government. The Liberal government. So then, when we received the support letter saying that we received the money, right after that, we had an election, and then everything went on hold. We have now just been told, right, what, a couple months ago, whenever it was, January, that we have decided that, yes, we will honor the grant. So any one of the municipalities that received this grant, and I think it was only 11 out of the province that received this 100,000, we never expected it because we just figured, just the way things are, it was going to be taken away. So we can, I would like to speak to the province and ask if we could implement in 2020 instead of just saying we don't want it. And at that time, council can decide. I don't know if I can postpone it till then, but it's at least a opportunity to ask.
Yeah, and then just as we talked earlier with the region, it's an opportunity for the region to get their review done with the with that Uber type of delivery model. So, you know, if we can go back to the province to say, you know, we need a little bit more time. The costs are, you know, it's a lot for our town, and can we look at starting it in 2020? And so just to buy some time and take the pressure off of this year's budget, but not to say no, because once you say no, you become blackballed in getting grants. It's not a good thing.
I'm not sure if we can. I know that it was up to 6 months of implementation, which is more than 6 months, but, you know, I've pushed them before. Maybe they'll. They like you.
Okay,
a
then, Ms.
thought.
Van Vaven, let's give you that direction. Do talk to the province, see if they can delay that a year.
To 2020.
Yes. Everyone happy with that then?
Yep.
Okay, and then we'll bring back the report to see what the numbers look like.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. We better order out for Chinese. So we gotta go back, right, because we're at Schedule 8, but now we're at Schedule 2, I believe. Anybody, what's Schedule 2? Schedule 3. So Schedule 2 is the, of operating expenses, general government, clerk, corporate services.
Yeah, so Schedule 2 was the pie charts that I did. It was Schedule 3 that I missed. If you want me to go through Schedule 3. I'm sorry I missed that in my PowerPoint presentation. Do you want me to go through Schedule 3, which is general governance?
Yes.
Okay, let me go
Actually,
through that one.
through you, Mr. Mayor, on Schedule 2, I just had a question
Sure.
under general government. And it shows proposed budget for council of $217,000 and change. And it's an increase of $32,376. How's that possible
So-
when
Yep, so the
we're not
schedule,
increasing
Schedule 3
salaries?
breaks it out, so if we can turn to Schedule 3. And the first category is members of council. So we have the $25,000 increase under contracted services, which is the consultant for strategic planning and the integrity commissioner. That's the $25,000 increase. And then we also had, there was an impact in the change of benefits resulting from federal changes in taxable status for the councilor's income. That's what that small $7,000 amount was. So that's where the $32,000 increase was. Do you have Schedule 3 in front of you? Or do you, does everyone have that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you got Schedule 3, yeah.
Okay, then the next one
around
is.
what the benefits are?
That was a decrease.
Okay, so Sean.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, although council did vote not to increase the pay, there's an employer portion of CPP and benefits that cost still increases to the town. So there was a report that went forward that had to do with whether we would change the net take-home pay versus the gross pay. So the gross pay stayed the same, but there's still additional employer cost of benefits.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
The next category is the CAO's office, and we have a decrease, and we changed permanently the admin assistant going from a going to a part-time position, and there was some global benefit allocations from last year. So there was a small decrease there. Marketing and communication, there was an increase in the budget for the community guide and other advertisements. The next one is human resources and health and safety. So this is where we had a change in the human resources director, moved on to another position, and so we took that position and we merged the health and safety, we put into one position health and safety coordinator and human resources coordinator into one position. So we took two positions and made it into one, and we had over $100,000 of savings doing that.
And the payroll clerk moved.
And the payroll clerk moved from this office, from human resources, down to the finance office. So that's why you see some of the dollars going down there. The clerk's department, what do we have here? The clerk's department, we decreased the allocation to the reserve to $15,000. So every year for the next 4 years, we're going to allocate $15,000 to get ready for the next election. And last year we had the full amount in there, so that's where we see some of those decreases. And committee of adjustments, the finance department. Our administrative position returned back to full-time. There was a full-time position in the CAO's office, and we did a swap that position stayed part-time and the full-time came into corporate services. And then we had some of the salaries there were allocated to transit. Number 10, we had about $40,000 of savings that we're projecting. The short-term borrowing costs are expected to be lower because we're going to start to have positive cash flows once the debenture is issued. So eventually we'll see more savings in that line. Number 11 is, shared overhead costs. So we have a category where some of the expenses for the whole town go under a shared admin service costs, and here we have some organizational changes, the impact of the organizational changes, and WSIB are in that line. There's been an increase in the insurance cost for a full year for the MCC. Let's see, 13. So the legal costs have gone up. We just had the budget reflects what the past few years' increases have been. And the next one is about $50,000, a transfer to the reserve for development charge exemptions. When exemptions are given for development charges, it actually is a cost to the town, so we show that. And I think that's it for that.
Councilor Corey?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Materials and supplies. I added up all of those. It worked out to $848,000. 25% of that $3,322,000. What is that?
Well, it
All of a
depends.
sudden, you say we just put in some insurance in material and supplies. I don't get why we do that. Why don't we just say insurance? That's what it costs.
Okay, so we have what's called like the financial information return categories. These are provincial categories, so there's a cluster of different accounts that are clustered under that heading. So we actually have the breakdown of what's under material and supplies in our GL. We have like insurance, we have the different categories, but this is the overall category. So when you're comparing all the different municipalities, they fall under that heading.
Because in some, through you, Mr. Mayor, in shared technology, we're paying 165, and wages are 107. I don't get that.
Okay, so
I just-
we'll get you that one as an
In
example.
every department, your wages would be your number one item, and everything else falls behind it.
Okay, we'll get that example. Just a minute. It's just what's under that classification.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, materials and supplies for shared information technology includes all the software licenses, all the software that we purchase for all the departments of the town. So that's why it looks high, because it's all the software that we need to buy for the engineers, for the clerks department, for the finance department, for recreation. So all of our software costs go into that department.
And it also has licenses, internet services, cell phones, telephones. So any IT-related item is in that category on behalf of the whole municipality. And there's also a transfer to reserves of $90,000 as part of that number. So that's a transfer to reserves to help pay for capital
We transferred,
to reserves. So remember how I said that $3.2 million of the operating budget is transferred to reserves, and that's how we approve the capital budget. So
Okay.
$90,000 of this budget went to the capital reserve for IT.
okay. Okay, good at this.
Okay. You want to go to tab 4, the fire department, fire and bylaw? Are there any questions for the fire chief? He hasn't had a question tonight. He wants a question. Fire chief, a question.
Why you sitting by the door?
I don't
This
see it.
one's straightforward, when you've been through that one. Tab 5 is transportation services, which is public works. So if there are any specific questions relating to that, there's also the explanations given to all of the increases. We included that in the binder.
Mr. Mayor, the debt service of 774,749. So that's is that interest payments? Public Works, I'm sorry.
So you're in Schedule 5, debt
Yes,
service?
Yes.
That's the interest and principal payments,
okay.
yes, pertaining to, anything pertaining to the Public Works Department, the roads. So this is, the budget's on a modified cash basis where, it actually has, we budget for the principal payments and also the interest payments. So it's not on an accrual basis. So at the end of the day, we have to generate enough cash to pay for everything. So this is what we're doing here. So that's why we're including the principal and the interest payment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Under general administration, what would the contracted services be for $12,000?
Contracted services.
It's under the general administration tab.
Yeah, sure, I was gonna look it up.
I can answer that question. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
So, the engineering staff and the engineering department gets put into the general administration for the public works. So you see facilities, beautification, roadway maintenance. The engineering department actually is in that general administration component. So the 12,000 would be made up of engineering services. So these are inspection services, plan reviews that like a third party would perform on behalf of the engineering department for the town. There was $7,000 budgeted for that for 2019. and engineering consultant for risk management at $5,000. So the $12,000 is really just for third-party engineering services that would support the engineering department.
Okay, is then when you get down to facilities, there's contracted services, is that engineering as well, and?
Oh, that's different.
So under the facilities, we talked about, remember, it's either the janitorial services that are outsourced or the contracts, the maintenance contracts for the facilities.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you had a question concerning the contracted services for facilities, it's a fairly large number, but it also is, there's a large number of items here, which is on the breakdown. So any elevator maintenance contracts that we have, I'll just read a few of them. Pest control, Moloch disposal, so disposal of our garbage collection in our Molochs. The MCC water plant, the Simcoe plant, HVAC system maintenance contracts, annual contracts with the pool. Just, you know, there's a number of different, a lot of these contracted services are going to be related to maintenance contracts that we have with the new MCC. And it also would include the janitorial services.
Thank you.
Councilor Stewart?
Mr. Mayor, is the sidewalk plowing included in this part of the budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it will be. So it'll be under the winter control, I believe, under the contracted services section. So right now, we have a third-party contractor that does our snow clearing of the sidewalks, as well as they take care of some commercial areas, parking areas that we don't do with our own equipment. So the sidewalk plowing contract itself, that portion of that contract is $114,000, and that's included in that line item. That's a third-party contractor.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, has the contract for that for next winter been signed yet?
The contract was in place. It was extended, and the contract is in effect until the end of 2021, the current contract.
Councilor Hildebrand? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm good.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Hildebrand.
The question I have here is, are we going to detail the utilities and the contract services at the MCC review? Because I see utilities is a large number here, contracted services is a large number. And is that where we're going to go over those details in particular, or should we be going over those details now?
Well, with regards to the utilities at the MCC,
Utilities at the MCC, contracted services.
Yeah, he wants to know if we're going to discuss that now.
if we want to, we can discuss it now. I mean, with regards to is the question, how do we come up with our number, or what is the question? Because right now with the contracted services, I don't know if you can hear me, Councillor Hildebrand, the contracted services for the maintenance, we have maintenance agreements. So we have a list of the maintenance agreements. And the utilities are based on, right now, on the actual usage, like what we're experiencing.
Because when we get to the MCC, I'm going to be going over the detail of obviously your hydro costs, and I'm going to be going over your natural gas costs. I'm going to be reviewing your contract services and your repair and maintenance budgets. So I'd prefer to do those details there because it's more broken out than.
Right, and that's part of my understanding. That's going to be part of the Utility Sustainability Committee. We're going to look at that in detail in that committee, and we'll bring that information back to council. Is that correct, Councillor Hildebrand?
We will be going over that in detail, but I'm not sure that the utilities budget for the MCC is correct for the 2019, nor the maintenance and repair budget nor the contract services, nor the natural gas services, based on the numbers we've worked out.
So are you saying it's too high or too low?
Too low.
So,
you wanna answer
Public
that?
Works is going to respond to that, I think. What schedule is the MCC
So,
under?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, if you look at tab 10, there, that's the breakdown of the MCC.
Just a minute, I'm gonna go to the schedule here, which has the breakdown of the
Schedule 10.
MCC.
I know what you're gonna say.
I know this.
In Schedule 10, Councillor Hildebrand, I think if you look at the hydro, the 2019 draft budget is showing at $422,140.
Correct?
Okay, flip back to Schedule 5. If you look under the breakdown, that's, actually, they don't have, do they have that breakdown? The GL accounts, they don't.
No.
So, sorry. It looks like there's a discrepancy in that spreadsheet for the MCC. In Schedule 5, in the breakdown I have, it looks like there's an estimated budget for the hydro of $513,000.
For the MCC, correct?
Right.
Okay, so let's Charlotte talk.
Yeah, that's in line with what I would project for the MCC.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the 513,000 is the hydro for all of our facilities. And then the hydro amount that's on Schedule 10 for the MCC is just the MCC alone. So the difference would be the hydro we're anticipating for all the other buildings and facilities.
Correct.
So,
I can't hear the response.
Councilor Hildebrand, I think so in tab 10, the hydro cost for the MCC is $422,140. That's what's been budgeted for the MCC. In the Schedule 5, under the hydro costs, the $513,000 would be the full,
All the buildings?
all the buildings.
I'm projecting the hydro cost for the MCC being $520,000 for the year.
Yeah, but I don't, excuse me, Councilor Hildebrand, I'm just wondering, are you including HST in there? Because we get a rebate on HST.
Well, I can tell you how through you, Mr. Mayor, I can tell you how I've done the calculation. I've done the calculation based on what we've read through December of this past year and the consultant's report. The consultant report and our usage lines up with 3.2 million kilowatts per year. If you do a calculation at 20 cents, that gives you $640,000. You take off a cent, that gives you 32,000. Let's say 40,000, that gets you 600,000. Then you take out 13% for HST, which is 78,000. That brings you to $522,000. And that's before the USC, the Utility Sustainability Committee, kicks in. We're believing we can get it down, but I'm not sure that we can get it down to 422. I think that's a giant step down.
How about going to the other ones then, natural gas?
Natural gas, through you, Mr. Mayor, the design by the consultant came in at a natural gas of 400,000 cubic meters. Our estimated cost right now is 32.5 cents. So basically, I'm saying our natural gas cost is in the vicinity of $125,000. Supposedly, if we can get the costs down, you can reach a budget of 95,000, but that's still 30,000 less than what I believe the costs are going to be.
And what, you had another one, the hydro and the gas and what else?
Repair and maintenance. Right now, I believe we have no spare parts. I don't think I think the budget was $25,000, if my memory is right. I don't have anything in front of me to show that, but I think that's a very small budget. And the contracted services for even the MCC, which are going to be starting, I would say in June, are going to be, I think, quite substantial. So I'm not sure whether the budget is there to cover that as well.
Okay.
The warranty until the end of June. There's a warranty period there.
Did you
So
hear that?
we can revisit that. I mean, these
Yeah.
numbers here, came from the,
Every month that goes by, we get more data on it, right?
Through you,
we
Mr.
haven't-
Mayor, I believe if we take a look at the 3 months operating data, we should be able to establish a better 2019.
Yeah, you're right, yes, but, I'll just say, but. I'll be a lot more, your hydro, I believe, has gotta be pretty close on, just because we know we projected that. But, to project natural gas usage in the summer is kind of, I think that's kinda hit and miss.
Well, the projected budget is based by the design by committee, which was done by the consultant. And they seem to be pretty accurate in most of the numbers as to what we've been getting so far with the building.
Okay.
so do you, Counselor Hildebrand, can you share your calculations and we can check it with what we have in our numbers? So we can go back and look at that?
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to increase the budget. I have to verify where the numbers are coming from.
Right. Well, basically what I'm saying is the hydro, we're projecting, well, the consultant projected as well, that we're going to hit 3.2 million kilowatts. So if you can come up with a budget based on those kilowatts times the price per kilowatt, that will give you our budget for the year minus your HST. And the gas, the consultant came up with 400,000 cubic meters, and we estimated your costs, our town's costs were 32.5 cents minus whatever the HST is. We estimated at 4.2 cents, bringing it down to 28 cents a cubic meter.
Okay.
Oh,
So we'll have to go and look at that because
Yeah.
that's a significant increase from what we have.
so we will, so,
So
council, when you get,
if he could send me those
Yeah.
notes, that'd be helpful.
yes. When you get back from vacation, Counselor, if you wanna bring those numbers in and, run them through the town staff again.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll be very glad to do that.
Thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
Is there anything else in Schedule 5? Schedule 6 is straightforward, that's the cemeteries. Schedule 7 is the recreation and cultural services.
Libraries. Mayor, so this is where I guess we can have a little chat about
So we're
libraries.
on, so we're on Schedule 7, or what?
Schedule 7, yep.
Libraries. Yeah, it's at the bottom there.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Well, the
Go ahead.
libraries, okay.
Right now, there's a
Oh, yeah.
$44,000 projected increase, or 5% for the library.
Yep.
I think we should have a chat about that, just find out what that is and get the sense across the board what we can do about that.
Yeah, it's salary and, as I mentioned earlier, their janitorial services, they're now with, the outsourced company that we are using, and they had an increase from the part-time person that used to be there, and that person retired. So that's the increase. Janitorial services and some staffing increase. Big part of their budget, the majority of that are staffing costs.
Pretty sure, actually, Counselor Hildebrand, I know
oh.
wants to also discuss the.
Counselor Hildebrand, you got a comment on libraries?
Yes, I do. I'm wondering, is there any way of holding the budget for 2019 at the 2018 level?
Well, we can go back and tell them that.
Huge increase.
They would have to go and look for those savings.
CEO mentioned that we could go back and open a debate with them.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that'd be much appreciated.
And I don't know, Ms. Quinlan, I think everyone on this council would like to have a chance to debate, or not debate, to question the library board on some of their other expenses. What's the correct protocol on that?
They are a separate board,
Yes.
and so,
Have we only got so much we can do, and then we just have to bite the bullet?
I think right now, right now, their whole model is based on at least, last year's allocation. I mean, they've got a whole, we just can't slash their budget. I mean, you can look at their increase, but you just can't go back without talking to them. I mean, their whole business model is based on
That would be something going forward.
Yeah, going forward, you can look at, are there things we can do to decrease that budget? That's the question.
Councilor Hahn?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because they have or will be, I guess, or soon to be posting for a CEO. And then
It has posted, it's posted right now.
Then they also have a deputy CEO, and between the two salaries, it's substantial. So I would think that if there's an opportunity, per the mayor's suggestion, if we can pose to them that, considering our situation here, and that we have a town of 17,000 people, having a CEO and a deputy CEO for the amount that they pay, I would think that that'd be something that they might want to review and have to reallocate that money and really think that through before they do a hiring, because they've got the posting out.
So, I would have, that's a separate board, and they have their separate bylaws as well. So right now, Counselor Stewart, you're on that board, like you're on the.
Yeah, I find that their wages are very high, and along with Councillor Hahn, to have a CEO and a deputy CEO for two small branches, I find that, I think it's a little much.
Okay, so we can, so what's the direction here for us to go back to? I would have to, the situation's awkward because the CEO is not there, and I would have to look at talking to the chair of the board.
Well, I'm just putting words here, and everybody, go ahead, Councilor Hahn.
Well, further to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, if they're putting a posting out, to be fair to the individual that applies for the posting and is interviewed and maybe gets the job, thinking they're gonna get X number of dollars for a CEO job, and then they're reallocated, shifting their money around, and then decide that they in fact can offer that person the money, that's not fair to that individual, or anybody. So I would just think sooner than later, we would want to let them know that it may not fly, so they're going to have to readjust whatever it is that they were going to offer.
I don't think we have that authority though with the library, so I'll have to look into that.
Then they'll have to cut it someplace else then, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I agree with Councillor Hildebrand. Could we just not freeze their budget and just say you're only
Well,
going to
we can
get as
freeze-
much
we can
as
freeze their budget.
2018?
We can say you're not getting that $44,000 increase, then they'll have to go back and find the difference.
And the,
Just like you can freeze our other lines as well.
so like Madam Clerk sent a note and said that we can invite them to come to council to answer questions. So that actually is probably, I would think that's what we have to do. We can't just, we have to give them a chance to defend themselves and at the same time give us an opportunity to ask them questions. Yes,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the deputy CEO, Amy, is, she's amazing. She's filling the position right now, and then she also filled the position when, before they hired Kirk. She's totally competent, and, and I've lost my train of thought. But it's just,
She would go and speak.
my brain stopped.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can comment that on inauguration night, I had the CEO of the library come up to me, and he said the only favor he was asking of me is not to cut their budget. They did talk to me about that, and I said, well, I can't guarantee you anything, but we'll consider it.
Okay, thanks, Councillor.
Invite them here?
I'm sorry?
We're gonna invite them back here?
Yeah, yes, yes, yeah, let's try that. In the meantime, are we going to freeze the budget, or are we going to allow it and then see what we can do going forward? Like to say, it is a provincially mandated board, so there is only so much we can do. I guess we do have the authority to freeze it.
I would suggest leave it as is, freeze it, as the same as 2018 for now.
We are, that?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's the direction we'll give you then.
Let them figure it out.
The next one is the community planning and development budget. If there are any other questions on this budget?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Transfer reserves under building department. I guess last year we put 63,000. This year's only 9,695. And then actual, we had a negative 53,700. So I presume we took money out of there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the building department is required to be self-sustaining. So the transfer to reserve number is always the number that balances that budget to zero. So if there were a shortfall, we would transfer from the building department reserve. In this case, we're still transferring to, but because there's been an increase in contracted services, then we had to reduce the reserve transfer number.
Okay, thank you.
So it'll always balance to zero.
Thank you. Any other questions on building or planning and development? Okay.
Last one. Those are all the different departments.
So any general all-round questions that may have got missed? Oh, Councilman Hildebrand. Go ahead, Councilor.
Oh, through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe one of the most important things for this council is to establish a proper communications plan. And I know there was a budget put in, and obviously I missed it somewhere, of 47,780, and there was just a couple items mentioned under there, and one of them was a community guide. But I believe 48,000 covers a lot more than that. And I've been asking for a detailed communications policy, and I think it's critical for us to establish a policy so we've got a roadmap and know where we're going. And I'm not sure who I should be asking the question for, but I think we need some direction there, because we just can't have a budget of $48,000 and not know exactly where we're going.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. Is that your department?
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor, I can start. We did base the budget on, firstly, the initiative to reestablish the community guide and the anticipated increase in newspaper advertisements going forward. Dollars are generally known in terms of what initiatives were undertaken in the past year. So, for example, in 2018, the initiatives were all about the community center construction. This year, they will transfer, of course, to community center programming and various communications in that respect. We have budgeted for print materials, as we always do, so that, yes, there was an increase to the budget this year, but that was mainly to address the reestablishment of the community guide, which will be coming out in the spring and the fall. And to also add for advertising. There is an overall communications plan that is being revised at the present time, and it will come to council in the near future. If Mr. McDonald has anything to add?
Mr. McDonald, do you have anything to add to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The clerk is correct. The communications plan is being revised. It'll be largely based on the outcomes of the strategic planning sessions that we've just recently completed. So now that we have council's visions and goals and some of the staff actions included in that plan, they will be transferred and built into the communications plan overall, and that'll help break out a little bit in more detail some of the initiatives and some of the goals. Certainly with the MCC now fully online, we will want to market that building not just within Pelham but also within the region. So to be able to kind of tap into the regional markets, there'll be an increased cost in advertising, as an example.
Councilor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I referenced Norfolk's community guide, and I thought what was important in that they had a statement from the mayor with regards to the new vision and goal and all that right at the beginning. And I think that's an important message to have right at the beginning of the new community guide, to inform the residents it's just not the same old community guide that we've had in the past.
Great, thank you.
There will be a mayor's
Yeah,
message
yeah,
included.
there is going to be a mayor's message in there. I thought you had already had seen it. I thought you were commenting on it. Oh, okay, excellent.
No, I've not seen it. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I've not seen the new an e-version of the community guide.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Councilor Stewart?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. McDonald, is there a draft copy of the community guide done?
Through Mr. Mayor, we have the pages. They're being created and fine-tuned right now. So the content has been completed for some time. We're just going through the final content revisions, so things like typos, just kind of tightening up some of the language. In terms of the layout of the guide, we just changed, I just completed a change with some of the look and feel to it. So it has been an ongoing process. I hope to have some pages to show all of council by the end of the week that are in a much more complete stage.
Further to that, will council have a look at the draft copy, the complete draft copy, before it goes to print?
Before it goes to print, I'm happy to send council, and of course SMT, a preview of the completed guide, yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Thor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could we go back to Schedule 23? Okay, and we'll make this short. I try to. And proposed this debenture, you had a $1.7 million. And if I'm saying this wrong, so we have people who donated $1.7 million to the MCC, right?
Yeah, so we have pledges of $3.2 million. So this is someone saying, I'm going to pay, X number of dollars towards community center. But the money is coming in different periods of time.
So we're borrowing money on that. We're as a.
But that's being paid by when the money comes in from the pledges.
Yeah, but we're
it's
still
paid
outright borrowing that money.
But it's not impacting the tax levy because the
Okay.
pledges are paying for it. It's a timing issue.
Okay,
So the
and
pledge, yeah.
could you explain what the $4 million was used for?
Okay, so we had the list of the projects. Oh, actually, what sheet is that on, Charlene?
Schedule 23 at the back. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you look at Schedule 23 at the back of Section 23,
Last page.
in the column 2019 debt proposed, you can see that there are 4 projects that are being proposed to be debentured. One is pre-development costs for new facilities, Wellspring Way Shaw Avenue, Summerside's East to Rice Road, and Summerside Station to Wellspring. So all of those projects were previously approved for debenture, and they proceeded. And then this is the amount we anticipate needing to debenture to return those funds.
Your question, Tom?
Did we really need those projects?
Don't ask that question, Ron.
I'm gonna ask, because I get asked every day. Do we really seriously needed those?
I'm not the,
Okay,
Yeah.
I guess no one can answer that question.
yeah, that was.
So, are we close? Because if we're gonna go a little bit further, then then we have to extend. Or are we done? It's up to
I'm
council.
fine.
Okay. Oh, John, Mary Ann, our councilor? Okay, so Ron, we're just gonna wrap things up here now. All I have to say is next time you Skype in, please put some clothes on. Hey, I had to look at this the whole night, and I don't know how Nancy put up with it. Okay, here we go.
Extend the curfew. If you're finished.
Oh, this is the curfew? So we don't have to do the curfew? Okay.
So I have a direction.
Oh, wait, Council Hildebrand?
Oh, now we have to extend the curfew.
Yes, Councilor.
I must ask you, through you, Mr. Mayor, is this video conference being recorded?
I have to ask the clerk. No, no, it isn't.
Picture.
No, it hasn't been. It was actually censored. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Which one of these first, Madame?
So I would suggest the staff direction for the library budget.
Okay. All right, motion put forward by Councillor Wink that the library budget be held to the 2018 budget level. Any more discussion on that? If not, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Deferred carried. Oops. Motion put forward by Councillor Corr that committee receive the presentation from the Treasurer Director of Corporate Services regarding the 2019 operating budget, and that the 2019 operating budget as amended with an overall 2019 increase of 7.12% after growth be recommended for council approval at their next regular meeting scheduled for March 18th, 2019, and that the clerk be directed to prepare the necessary budget approval bylaws. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Oh, and this is the last one? Okay. Motion put forward by Councillor Trophy that this regular meeting of committee be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for March 18th, 2019, following council. All those in favor and all those opposed. Meeting is adjourned.